Class 10th, History, Chapter 3, Nationalism in India. Good morning, children. Today we are going to take up this chapter, Nationalism in India. Now, let us have a brief overview of the previous chapter, not in fact the overview, just important points which is going to form the basis of this chapter. In our previous chapter, the broad concept that emerged was the concept of nationalism. And we all have understood that this feeling of nationalism developed with the development of nation state. When we talk about nation state, we are talking about a state which gets developed because of the collective identity that existed, and people were able to identify themselves with that identities. They started believing that they are belonging to a same nation, a nation which has got common flag, common language, common culture, common past, or different types of efforts that they have initiated in order to get a concept of nation, or a nation which now rightfully belongs to them. So they have strived a lot in that respect, and finally now they have got a nation, and a nation which gives them their identity. So this concept was emerging all across the world, and people were now developing a nation state. They were coming out from the clutches of empires. They were establishing their own nation, and they tried to identify themselves with that particular nation. So India was not away from it or aloof from it. If you talk about Indian history, we all know that India had a very glorious past. It was called as the Golden Bird. It was called as Golden Bird rightly because it had lots of wealth, prosperity. People had very strong and influential culture, which actually outnumbered the thinking of the people of the Western world. So they were very much attracted to this country. So if we talk about a brief overview of our Indian history, which you have already studied in your previous classes, that India was a very rich country, and gradually it started becoming subjugated to British rule, and probably that started from the year just well before 1765, when Britishers started coming to India. They came to India and they started trading, and when they started developing trade relations with our country, so they started gradually realizing that this trading is not going to be too much of benefit, too much will not be too much beneficial to them unless and until they are able to control the people and the country itself. So that way they started having interference in the political formation or political setup of the country. That political setup paved the way for their interference in the economic internal economy of the country, and then ultimately had an impact on the social setup of the country, because we all know that a social setup of a country is very much important for a kind of economic growth or economic development we would like to have for that particular country. So Britishers started taking advantage of this, and they started gradually controlling all the political, social and religious setup of our country just to meet their economic needs and requirement. So people started facing problems, and that problem gradually led to different small revolts which started coming up from 1765, and it continued till 1856. So and then we had that great revolt of 1857, revolt of 1857, which is considered to be the first war of independence. So this was something which was brewing up in our country, and people were not happy with the Britishers, because the economic policy that these Britishers followed, it actually led to the impoverishment of peasantry. And then there was establishment of British rule, which led to the quick ruin of Indian artisans and craftsmen. Then there were the British had their policy of annexation of territories, which led to various dispossession of human Indian rules, and they started becoming dead enemies to the Britishers. And then another important thing was that Britishers started moving on to the spree of conversions. They started converting Hindus into Christians. So this all created lot many problems, to the Indian masses, and that eventually led towards the revolt. And that is one of the important revolt that we have already talked about. That is the revolt of 1857, and that came up with Mangal Pandey largely because they started smearing the the war weapons that they used with the oil of the pigs and cow, which they literally abhorred and hated. So that again touched the Indians. So that literally brought lots of revolt in different regions of the country. And Mangal Pandey, which was a revolt that was initiated by him at Barakpur, that became one of an important element which immortalized his name, and it lit the flames of nationalism in this country. So lot many things happened in that movement that led towards the development of extremists and moderates group, and formation of the Congress party that took place. So this all gradually led towards the development of a strong base for Indian nationalism. So with the coming up of the Congress party in the year 1885, it got support, a political support, which could organize and administer the policies that could be initiated by the people of this country, which is going to probably wage a war finally for their independence. So now when all these things were happening in our country, that led towards the development of what is now we call as modern nationalism. So when we talk about this modern nationalism, how this modern nationalism emerged? This modern nationalism emerged because it had its connection with all this anti-colonialist feeling that developed. Now why it developed, which I've already told you, that how people of India, they were literally tortured and tormented by the British people on all the different aspects, be it political, be it social, or be it economic. So that developed a feeling of anti-colonialism, and this development of anti-colonial feeling led toward the development of nationalist feeling or nationalism. So then they started discovering that they are united together. If they are not united, they are not going to let these people down. So it is very much essential to force Britishers out of their country, that they need to be united. So, and apart from this, they started realizing that there are a lot many problems that these British rule is impinging on the Indian people, and this problem has to be solved, or will be solved, or can be solved only when they are going to take that initiative. So Congress party, we have already discussed, I've already told, that started taking its ground, and it got formed in the year 1885, and then it started paving the path to bring people together, and then it started executing the policies which led towards the grouping up of the people belonging to different streams. Like we had AD, he was this AD Hume, he was a retired member of the Indian Civil Service, and he was the a great impetus for the foundation of this Indian National Congress. And he addressed the people at Calcutta, Bombay, and then he started motivating the people. So this is how Congress started gaining grounds, because they were administrative people, educated people, who could very well understand the needs and requirements of the country on and whole, and that is how they could formulate the people to join hands together and move towards take an initiative or take a step towards making India an independent nation. So these things also added to the feeling of nationalism. And then there was this coming up of Mahatma Gandhi from South Africa in the year 1915. So that actually started the final war against British people and led India achieve independence. So I've just told you a detailed, though it is not in actually detail, but then summarized in a way so that you are able to understand a brief past of our country, and how people had faced many problems in the British rule, and they were literally fed up with those problems, with those torment, with those torture. And they started reading novels, journals, those Rousseau, who has written the book on socialism, and he has talked about different people, Montesquieu and John Locke, they all have talked about that how there has to be legislative, executives and judiciary who is going to play an important role in the formation of a government, so that that government is for the people and is working for the people. So all these ideas, literary work were also getting transported to this country, and people were reading, educated masses were reading, and they were getting an idea. So that also generated a feeling that this is now the iron is hot to be hit. So that is how they started taking that initiative in order to fight against the Britishers for their independence. And with the coming up of Mahatma Gandhi, it all started with full force. So now this chapter that we are going to take up, nationalism in India, is going to start from a point when Mahatma Gandhi came to this country. And Mahatma Gandhi came to this country in the year 1915. So he started building certain background or a platform in order to motivate Indians to fight for their independence, because this is what he has already done in Africa. So you all are very much aware that we left the last chapter at a point when there was a world war that got started in the year 1914 to 1900, and it continued till 1918. At that time we have discussed how the Balkans, they also started to identify themselves as a single entity or a nation, and different European countries in their wage towards imperialism, they started pounding on this Balkan people so that they can have the control over them. So that led ultimately towards the World War. So this World War created many problems. So what were the problems? There were many defense expenditure. The money that that could actually be used for economic growth and development, for people empowerment, for meeting the requirements of the citizens, that was now used for defense expenditure. Then there was again increase in the taxes that the government were charging from the people, because from where they are going to meet these defense expenditure, because production activity was coming almost to a standstill. So many custom duties were being charged on the goods imported. So all these things created a problem of rise in the prices. So all these economic happenings there created extreme hardships, and people were literally not able to generate an income to meet their requirements. On top of that, there was this forced recruitment. Forced recruitment means that because there was a need for war, people were also required to join the war. So the people were forced to join the army, and they were forced to fight a war. So all these were the problems that were happening in our country also. So why we are talking about all these problems here? Because these were the problems which is not only faced by the people across the world, but it was a problem that was also faced by the Indians. So Indians were forced to go for defense expenditure that was increasing largely because Britishers were forcing Indians to help in different kind of wars that it was involved into. And then it was increasing the taxes that it was imposing on the Indians, and then huge amount of custom duties it was also charging. So that led probably towards an increase in the prices of the goods and commodities that were being sold in the country. So this all resulted into extreme hardships. Upon this kind of condition that existed, there were forced recruitment, means it was a process through which the colonial people, they forced the Indians to join the army, and they will go with the British people and fight war for them. So they needed people. On top of that, already these problems were existing in our country. On top of that, what happened was that there was an influenza epidemic. So this epidemic, it created problems, and people died. And there were famines, and people all of a sudden there were too much of death. So there was dearth of people, dearth of human resources. We needed people for war, we needed people for production activity, we needed people to generate an income, and then there was this epidemics which took the lives of the people. So that all created huge problems in the country. So this was a condition that people were going through, and during this time Mahatma Gandhi arrived in our country, and then he motivated people to he motivated people to start fighting for their independence. So what he did was that he was a person who had already he gave the idea of satyagraha. Now what is this satyagraha? Now, when we are going to talk about a satyagraha, as the name suggests, it is a struggle with non-violence. Means it is very much difficult to be not to be non-violent when you are going under extreme torture, you are going under extreme hardship. So what Mahatma Gandhi believed was that the answer to violence cannot be violence. It has to be non-violence only. If a person is hating you, then you cannot reply him back with that same gesture. If you literally want to change that person, if you literally want to bring a change in the society, so what he believed was this, that you have to reply with love, you have to reply with acceptance. So that is how you are going to heal people from a disease which they are suffering. He viewed it as a disease, he viewed violence as a disease, he viewed hatred as a disease. So he came with an idea of satyagraha, and this is what he had done in South Africa. And in South Africa, he had successively fought this racist regime that existed in South Africa. And with this new method of satyagraha, which he called as mass agitation, means in large number people are going to agitate, people are not going to follow the rules and regulations, they are not going to indulge into violent activities, but simply they are not going to do what is being told to them. So that was the simple kind of agitation that he adopted in South Africa also, and that emphasized that was largely based on truthfulness. So if you are true to your demand, or if you feel that whatever you are demanding is justified, then you need not fight for it. You just have to express your desire, and sometime or the other the government is going to adhere to your demand, because how long they are going to not listen to the justified demands of the people. So this is what Mahatma Gandhi talked of when he is talking about this satyagraha movement. So he started this satyagraha movement in India also, and he came to this country in January 1915, and he started emphasizing on truth. And in that reference, what he did, he started organizing satyagraha movements in our country also. So there are three important satyagraha movements that is mentioned. One he started in the year 1916, that was in Champaran district of Bihar, where he was not happy with the struggle that the peasants were facing under this progressive plantation system. So that was one of the initiative that he took, that people should revolt for this oppressive plantation system that they were forced to work in. Then in the year 1917, it was in Kheda, Gujarat, where the peasants of this Kheda district, they were very much affected by this crop failure and this epidemic, but they were forced to give huge amount of rents. So this revenue collection has to be stopped or suspended, because peasants were facing the problem, but they were not given this kind of compassion. They were not shown this kind of compassion by the Britishers. So Mahatma Gandhi wanted that you should go on for satyagraha movement, where you are not going to we are going to deny that payment largely. This is what he meant. And then in the year 1918, he talked about satyagraha movement that he launched in the year Ahmedabad. That was for the cotton mill workers who were also not getting the justifiable working conditions. So these are the three important satyagraha movements that he started when he came to India. So you have to remember it. It started in the year 1916 in Champaran, 17 in Kheda, Gujarat, and in 18 Ahmedabad. So these three years and the places where the satyagraha movement got started is important. It can be asked as 1 mark question, and it is also asked in map question. You have to locate and label. So these places. Then we move down towards the next thing that is being mentioned here, that is the Rowlatt Act, that got initiated in the year 1919. Now when Mahatma Gandhi had started with the satyagraha movement, and people were starting to not cooperate with the Britishers, so that actually disturbed these Britishers. So what they did was, that they decided that they are going to launch this Rowlatt Act, because Mahatma Gandhi decided that he is going to launch this Satyagraha movement nationwide. So Britishers were not happy with the Satyagraha movement, so they decided that if the people are going to go for the Satyagraha movement, means that they are going to congregate, they are going to group themselves together, and they are not going to follow, they are not going to do anything what is being told to them. So then what these Britishers did, they came up with this Rowlatt Act in the year 1919. And what is this Rowlatt Act? So this Rowlatt Act means that if people have congregated on the streets, okay, so then what they are going to do, they are going to put these people behind bars without trial for 2 years. So it was this, that no Indian people are going to form a group and discuss and talk about. If they are found doing so, they will be put behind bars, and that is going to be for 2 years. So this was largely this detention of political prisoners. That was the initiative that was taken through this Rowlatt Act. So this was something which was not liked by the citizens of this country, and they went started with this hartal. They stopped cooperating with the Britishers. So they started taking out these rallies in various cities, and workers, they went on strike. Railway workshops were closed, shops were shut down, and then this all disrupted the smooth functioning of the British government. So then this was literally creating a trouble. So then the Britishers were not happy. They were forcing these people inside the jail, but these people were not cooperating with the Britishers also. So this was something that was a development that started happening in India with the starting up of the Satyagraha movement. In consequence, with the Rowlatt Act that was being passed by the Britishers, that resulted into lots of strikes and lockouts, non-functioning of various government institutions like railways, shops, and other various areas. So that created a problem. So when all these things were going on, people started, some group of people in Amritsar, they decided to meet, and that was a plan that they are going to meet on 13th of April in the year 1919 only. So they will be meeting at this Jallianwala Bagh, and it was also to celebrate the Baisakhi. So this was something which people decided to do. But these people, they were not aware of the decision that was being put in functional by General Dyer, that there is now going to be a martial law. No one is going to move out or move around. But these people, they were not aware of this. So they congregated in Jallianwala Bagh, and they also congregated there on 13th of April to celebrate Baisakhi. When General Dyer, he became aware of this kind of activity that is going on in Amritsar, he was shocked and he was very angry. So what he did was, he moved to that place and he closed all the doors of that particular garden or a bagh, and there he entered into that whole area, Jallianwala Bagh, and he started shooting people, and literally everyone was killed. So it was a very horrendous scene, that even if today if you go, you will just see that how people used to literally climb the walls of that Jallianwala Bagh, which was very high and could not cross over it. There was well inside, and people would jump inside the well, but then they were shot dead. Children, women, old people, they all were shot down by the Britishers, and it was literally a cold-blooded murder. And General Dyer, he said that this he did because he wanted to declare that this is going to have or produce a moral effect on the people, and they are not probably going to do this. So this was a feeling of terror and awe which he wanted to create into the minds of the people. So this is how we talk about here, that there was a Jallianwala Bagh incident, and it took place in order to produce a moral effect. Now after this Jallianwala Bagh incident, what happened? People started going into for strikes and loots, etc., because they were unhappy with this Jallianwala incident. So they started turning themselves into violence. They started crushing these Britishers, people, and looting, and they started indulging themselves into vandalism and all. So this all created lot many problems, and in return Britishers also started indulging into non-violence activities. So there was lots of violence, and people were forced to go behind the bars. People were literally put into the jail. People were asked to do salam. They were a lot many other things, small things that could bring humiliation to the people, that these Britishers would spit on the floor and they would ask the Indians to bow down and lick their spit from the floor. So this was a small humiliating activities that was being done by these Britishers. So it literally created a horrendous situation, very demeaning situation for the Indians. They never wanted to cooperate, but they could not do anything. So it was literally everything was brewing up inside there. The revolt was brewing up inside. So then when all these things turned non-violent, Mahatma Gandhi was forced to shut it down, because he wanted to move on to a path of satyagraha, that is the path of truth, that was totally based on non-violent activities. So this forced Mahatma Gandhi to call off this satyagraha, and then Mahatma Gandhi, he decided that now this thing has happened. He got an idea from the country as to how they are going to respond. So he decided that his decision or this movement has to be broad based. So he wanted that everyone should come together, should understand what is his objective. So he now needed to have this more broad-based movement in India, but he was very much sure that such movement cannot be organized unless and until we all are united. Specifically, Hindu-Muslim unity he talked of. And at that time, incidentally, what happened was that in Ottoman Empire, you remember that Ottoman Empire was breaking down, and in European people, they were literally forcing these empires to crackle down and should have control over those provinces who were a part of the Ottoman Empire. So in that fight, the British people, they had captured their Khalifa who belonged to Turkey. So this was something which was disliked by the Indians, because this Khalifa, he was the spiritual head. Khalifa was the Khalifa was the spiritual head of the Britishers, and he was imposed on with lot many harsh treaties which was not liked by the Khalifa was the spiritual head of the Muslim community, and he was imposed with lot many harsh peace treaty which was not liked by the Muslim community. So that led towards the formation of Khilafat, group or committee or issue in our country. So this formation of Khilafat, or against the policies of the British, which was against the Khalifa, so that led towards the spreading up of the Khilafat movement in India. So as a response to it, there was a Khilafat committee that was formed in our country in Bombay in the same year, that is March 1919. And there were two Muslim brothers. He was Muhammad Ali and Shaukat Ali, and they started discussing with Mahatma Gandhi about how it is possible to unite a mass action on this particular issue. So Mahatma Gandhi took this issue very handy, and he started with a Calcutta session that got organized in the year 1920, and he convinced that we are there with this Khilafat movement, and then he tried to join this Khilafat movement with this movement of Swaraj. So it was the culmination of the two events, and it resulted into very important element of Hindu-Muslim unity, because he wanted to say to the Muslim community that these Britishers are not for you, we are here for you, we all are one, it is our country, and let us fight together against these oppressive policies of the Britishers. So that was the way that led towards the initiation of the Khilafat movement. That Khilafat movement, it was against the kind of policy prescription that was initiated by the Britishers towards this Khalifa, that who was a spiritual head, and this Khilafat movement was also initiated to fight for Swaraj. So now what they started doing, Khilafat means Khilaf, Britishers ke Khilaf. So what they started expressing their Khilafat, that was through the non-cooperation. They started that we are now not going to cooperate with the Britishers. Here there is one important thing that has come up in his book Hind Swaraj in the year 1909. Mahatma Gandhi has written that these Britishers are ruling over us because we have given them the right to rule over us. It is because of our cooperation that these Britishers are ruling over us. So now he said that let us stop cooperating with the Britishers, and that is the only solution to this problem. Now, how we are not going to cooperate with the Britishers, it will unfold in stages. So what he said we should be doing, he said that let us begin by surrendering the titles that has been given to us by the Britishers. So these titles had created discriminative environment in the country. So he started with the initiatives from the side of the Indians, that first we will be surrendering all the titles that has been awarded by the government to us Indians. Then second, what we are going to do, we are going to boycott all the civil services, different police courts, and different various other councils, legislative councils that is being governed or is being asked to be governed by us or being worked by us. And then he said that we are going to boycott all the foreign goods. He said that we will be boycotting foreign clothes, and then we are going to move on towards our indigenous production. So these are some of the things that he talked of, that we are going to now start with non-cooperation movement, and this is how we are going to initiate it. But then there were some Congress leaders, they never wanted to boycott this council elections, because they feared that this movement might lead to violence. But then as the months followed, there were lots of tussle between the different opinion holders in the Congress. And then finally there was a Congress session at Nagpur in the year 1920, and they came at a compromise, and then finally they adopted this non-cooperation movement. So this is how this non-cooperation movement was started. Now we are going to move up with different strands. Here we are talking about this different strands within the movement. Now when we are going to talk about different strands between the movement, we are going to see how this non-cooperation movement affected different economic groups or segments of the society. So what we see here, that this non-cooperation movement got started in the year 1921. As it is mentioned in your book, but you can also write 1920 to 1921. If you're writing this answer, it is not going to be wrong, because this question also comes as in which year non-cooperation movement was started, though it is specifically mentioned that this movement began in the year 1921. So now this with the starting up of this movement in the year 1921, it was successful because people started participating in it, and different people belonging to different community, associated with different professions, started participating in this non-cooperation movement. Therefore, or hence, this non-cooperation movement affected different people in a different way. So how it affected different communities in our country, that is what we're going to study, and this part also becomes very important. So here we are going to take into consideration first the movement that took place in the towns, how it affected the people in the towns. When we are going to talk about towns, obviously we are going to talk about middle income people or rich income people. So what was happening with this non-cooperation movement? When these middle income people, they started participating with this non-cooperation movement, they started losing their job, because that is what they were doing. They were not cooperating with the Britishers, and some of them started also boycotting those council elections. There is a mention of one party which is known as the Justice Party, and this Justice Party existed in Madras. Here this Justice Party belonged to the non-Brahmins. Now, when there was a decision by the Indians not to participate in the Legislative Council election, members of the Justice Party who were non-Brahmins decided to participate in the elections, because they believed that this is now an opportunity that has come to them, so that they can get a chance to win an election, have an important say in the decision making. So they did not boycott those council elections. So that is why here Justice Party, which was a party of the non-Brahmins that existed in Madras, decided not to boycott the council elections, because here they got the chance of gaining some power. So this part becomes important, because there is a specific mention of this Justice Party. So now this was the thing that is associated with only with election and Justice Party. The rest of the subject matter of this specific section, that is movement in towns, it talks about that people largely denied to participate in the activities that they normally used to carry out, that led towards the creation of a situation where they were jobless, that further had an impact on the economic functioning of the country, that was definitely going to affect the revenue of the country. Then there were foreign goods that was largely boycotted. The liquor shops, that was picketed. Everyone was not allowed to go looted and destroyed. Foreign clothes that was being available to the Indians, they literally burned them into bonfires. Different other things that was being imported from the Britishers, that had declined. There is a mention that from 1921 to 22, it was about there was a dropping of imports from rupees 102 crore to rupees 57 crore. So this is an extent of decline that had happened during this non-cooperation movement that started. So all these boycott or non-cooperation movement widely spread. But then there was one problem. And what was the problem? That when these Indians, they started boycotting, they started giving up their jobs, they started refusing to use and buy the goods that was produced by the Britishers. So, but then what was the alternative? They could not stop eating, they could not wearing the clothes, and khadi that was now being churned on was very costly. It was not affordable by the poor people, and there were no institutions that was being offered by the Indians to generate employment opportunities. So it started with great vigor, strength and fervor, but then it finally settled down, and gradually, in a very slow process, people again began to start joining the British institutions. So this was how the movement started in the towns, but ultimately because of the situations that existed, they were forced to join these institutions and to go back to work. So it started, but then it ended with a sad note. Then there is another point, that is rebellion in the countryside. When you're going to talk about countryside, here we are going to talk about villages. So what was happening in the village? In villages, situations were very worse. You all know that there were many people who were farmers. They were working as begar. So first, one important thing was that people started moving from villages to the towns. Okay, so and there are small incidents or stories that is being mentioned here in rebellion in the countryside. There is one story that is mentioned about the Awadh peasant. And when we talk about Awadh peasant, this movement was led by Baba Ramchandra. And who was he? He was a sannyasi, and who has earlier been worked in Fiji as an indentured laborer. So this movement, it was against the big landlords that existed in the villages, who were demanding high rents from the peasants and the farmers. And these peasants and the farmers, they were also forced to work as begars. You all know what is begar means. You are working but you are not getting the remuneration. So this created lots of problems to the poor farmers. They started migrating from villages to the towns. They started demanding that there should be reduction in the revenue that is being collected. They demanded that there should be abolition of begar, and there should be a boycott of those landlords who are oppressive in nature. So all these things started brewing up in village side. Then it was Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru who started moving around the villages of Awadh, and he started talking to the villagers, and he started to make them understand the limitations also, and he also tried to understand their problems. And then there was a meeting that was organized as Awadh Kisan Sabha, which was headed by Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru and Baba Ramchandra. And it was set up with the villages around, and largely to help the people understand that yes, they are trying to understand their problems. But the effort that the Congress was tried to integrate this Awadh peasant into the wider struggle of this fight for independence, that actually could not materialize, because the peasant were not very much happy with the way the Congress were dealing with this situation. They were just speaking, but actually they were not doing anything. So these movements, they started gradually turning violent, because they were not getting an answer to their problems. So in many places, like local leaders told Gandhiji that they are going on with non-cooperation movement, but that actually is not working out, because the peasants are not getting solutions to their problems. So and then later on what they started doing, they started using the name of Mahatma Gandhi, and they started invoking sanctions, they started invoking violent activities. So that ultimately led towards the defeat of the objective of this non-cooperation movement. So this was one thing that happened in the countryside. So when we are talking about countryside, you will be talking about Baba Ramchandra and how he started to he along with Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru organized Awadh Kisan Sabha. What were the problems that they were facing, but their problems could not be solved, and ultimately the thing started turning out to be violent. So it could not actually meet the desired objective of this non-cooperation movement, but it was a beginning. There was a beginning. Now we are moving on to third concept or third point where we talk about Swaraj in plantation workers. Okay, so before we move on to Swaraj in plantation workers, actually I just wanted to tell you, because I missed on one point. It was also there was, when we talk about rebellion in countryside, there is also a mention of this, what do we say, tribal peasants. And these tribal peasants, they had also interpreted this message of Mahatma Gandhi, and they had their leaders. There is a mention of one tribal peasant leader, that is Alluri Sitaram Raju. He resided into the Gudam hills of Andhra Pradesh, and he started this fight against the British community. And largely he started this fight against British community because these British community, they restricted them to move into the forest regions. And this colonial government, it had closed these forest areas into which these tribal people had survived. We all know that tribal people, they live in jungle. They are very much associated with the nature. So with the restriction, with the Indian Forest Act, etc. coming up, so we all have done about how the peasants, they faced a problem because of the Indian Forest Act and division of the forest into protected forest, reserved forests and village forests. So that all created problem. So these villagers, they were facing problems. They have lost their livelihood. There is a mention of Alluri Sitaram Raju, and it was the same problem. What happened? That same problem means that they were also not getting their livelihood, and they were not also getting the solution to their problems. They were forced to work as begar. The same thing as was being faced by those people who were residing in the villages. Here we are talking about the people who were into people so-called tribal peasants. So here we have Alluri Sitaram Raju, who claimed that he has got a variety of supernatural powers, and he can make unbelievable astrological predictions, and he could survive even the bullet shot. So people started residing faith in him, and they viewed him as a god. So Raju, he talked about his greatness, and he then also talked about the greatness of Mahatma Gandhi. So he was very much inspired by this non-cooperation movement. So there was a revolt in the countryside. Tribal peasants, they also revolted. But there was a difference between the perception of Alluri Sitaram Raju and Mahatma Gandhi. And what was it? That Alluri Sitaram Raju strongly believed that the right of the peasants can be had only and only if they are going to involve into violent activities, which was not at all the policy formulation of Mahatma Gandhi. So this problem was this was a problem between the perception of Alluri Sitaram Raju and Mahatma Gandhi. So because the rebels, the tribal peasant of Gidam Hills, they were very much in association with Alluri Sitaram Raju. They attacked different police stations, and they also attempted to kill British officials, and then they carried on different types of warfare, especially the guerrilla warfare. So all these kinds of toughs and tussles were taking place between Alluri Sitaram Raju and his men with the British people, and finally he was captured. The leader Alluri Sitaram Raju was captured in the year captured and killed in the year 1924. So people recognize him as a hero. So here we end with the rebellion in the countryside. Now we move on to another, that is Swaraj in the plantations. So when we talk about Swaraj in the plantations, what does it mean? That plantation workers, when the forests were cleared off, people were forced to indulge into plantation activities. And here there is a mention of plantation workers of Assam, and they did not get the freedom and the right to move freely in and out of the confined space in which they were forced to work, because they have to take care of the forest. And in that reference, the British government has also passed this Inland Emigration Act. Okay, so British government has also passed this Inland Emigration Act of 1859, and through this it was not permitted to the plantation workers to leave the gardens in where they were working. So that was a problem which the plantation workers were facing. Now when they heard the news that Mahatma Gandhi has started up with non-cooperation movement, so they were very much attracted by the policy formulation of Mahatma Gandhi, and they got a feeling of reprieve, and they also had this feeling that probably now they're going to get this Swaraj. So what they started doing is that they started defying the authorities, they started disobeying the rules and regulations of the authorities, and they started believing that now this Gandhi Raj has come, and probably they will now be freed from these kind of begar activities that they're forced into. So they started leaving the forest area, and they started going back to their own villages, thinking that probably they are going to get their land and they will start working on their land. So this was this is how the movement started in different parts of our country. We have talked about towns, we have talked about villages, and we have talked also about the forest regions where tribal people were working. Apart from tribal people, we have also talked about the plantation workers who were forced to work by the Britishers. So what was the ultimate outcome? The ultimate outcome was that there was an interpretation of Swaraj. Interpretation of Swaraj means different people were interpreting Swaraj or freedom in their own respect. Different people were facing different types of problems, and when they got this opportunity through Mahatma Gandhi, that there is a leader who has come to support him, they started perceiving that yes, now there is going to be freedom from all these kind of atrocities and problems that they are into. So they all started believing that they are now going to be freed from their troubles and suffering, and they started dreaming of Swatantra Bharat, a Bharat which is going to give them the freedom to do what they desire, a Bharat which is going to give them respect, a Bharat where they will be free as like a bird and can have their nest built in any part of the world. So this was it was like an utopian imagination dream that they all started to have, which was being the seed of this particular dream was sown by Mahatma Gandhi. So this non-cooperation movement was continued to move on, but in the year there is a special mention of Chauri Chaura that nothing is written about in the book, but there is a picture that is being given, and there is a picture which talks about that how a Chauri Chaura incident took place in the year 1922 in Gorakhpur, where there was a violent clash between the people, and this clash was being done by the people onto the police station, and it was the police station was largely burnt by the Indian revolters. So this turned these revolters into violent activities, which forced Mahatma Gandhi to call off this non-cooperation movement.